Joelle, do you have some carpal tunnel going on?
No, just a little bit, not too bad. So I just use it just for preventative measures.
Got it. Okay.
How did you
And
enjoy?
for mixed martial arts, right?
Yeah, exactly.
How's your backpacking trip go, Dave?
Oh, it was wonderful. Absolutely
jealous.
wonderful. Thank you. We managed to stay out of the smoke,
Oh,
and there weren't a lot of people there, so it's wonderful.
but dry.
Yes,
So where in Sierra did you go?
the Eastern Sierras. Yeah,
Ah, yeah. It's still pretty sparsely populated, huh?
yeah. And it was pretty high elevation, 9,000, 10,000 feet.
Oh,
Were you up above Bishop?
Yeah, it was north of that. Yes.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Best cinnamon buns known to mankind in Bishop.
Oh, okay. With that, I'll go back.
I'll go in that direction.
who knew?
Speaking of carpal tunnel syndrome, I have fingers that are curling. My little finger right there,
Oh,
Oh,
and this finger right here, it just kind of are slowing, going this way. And it's called Dupuytren's. It's supposedly a Scandinavian kind of gene from a gene pool somewhere.
wow.
Anyway, I think all I've proven is that I've got Scandinavian blood, but that's about it.
and did you know that?
Bad. So,
Oh,
I just use
No,
it just
I
for
knew I had
preventative-
this, but I didn't know I had Scandinavian blood. That was
Did you
later.
Joelle, do you have some carpal tunnel going on?
I hope I don't have that gene. That would get in the way of my cello playing for sure.
oh,
I just use it
I had
just for
3
preventative
surgeries on it.
measures.
Got it.
Well, let's see,
Okay.
1, 2, 3 surgeries on
Did
2
you
fingers.
How's your backpacking trip go? And it worked on one and not the
Oh,
other?
it was
No,
wonderful.
it just doesn't work. It's a temporary relief and then it comes back.
What they released the tendon?
What they do is clean the tendon because they don't cut the tendon, but it's a growth on the tendon that kind of pulls it together, and they just scrape it all off and then give you another shot at letting it come back, I guess.
Ouch.
But it does. I've shaken hands with people with their fingers are just curled right in. They're just tight into their hand like this, and when I shake hands and I always
Alvin is
Great.
not over there.
I was on the phone.
All right. Well, let's wait couple minutes. We can't really meet.
Okay. Joelle, do you want to send a link to Mayor Roberson, or do you want me to do that?
I'll go ahead and forward the link over to Mayor Roberson.
There's hello, Safwat. I will send a text to Alvin.
Alvin should be
Oh.
here.
Oh, he's here. He's here.
Okay.
Here's Alvin. Okay, let's start the meeting. And
Let me send a link to Mayor Roberson,
yeah,
and then I'll need a countdown so that way Mario could start recording on his end. So that way it could broadcast on the AMP channel and on YouTube. Let's see.
okay.
And then Dave, I did send over the link, so he should have it now. You
Okay.
just need to let him know.
Yeah, was that the big email with all the links, the individualized links?
No, I just sent him a new one, so he doesn't have to go through the table. And then I'll go ahead and count down, Mario, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. You can start recording.
Good evening, directors, staff, members of the public, general counsel. This is the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the Water Management District, August 15th, 2022. And it is 6:03. Let's call the roll, please.
Director Anderson?
Here.
Director Roberson? Director Riley?
Here.
Director Edwards?
Here.
Director Malik?
Here.
Director Roberson?
Not yet.
Not yet. Vice Chair Adams is absent. Chair Paul,
Here.
we have a quorum of the board.
That's what.
The mayor has just joined.
Very good.
Got it.
I don't see him yet, but I trust you.
Was Safwat's name's called?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Have we confirmed that Mayor Robeson is with us?
Yep, he's waving.
Mayor
Oh,
Roberson,
welcome, Mayor Robeson. Okay.
I'm waving in the
Hi.
wind.
Let us stand, if you don't mind, for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
There are not. There was some discussion about some edits to the minutes, which Joelle has embraced, but they're non-substantive.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for making those corrections, Joelle. Any corrections from any directors? Okay. And we can move on. It's time now for oral communications. Joelle,
Yes.
over to you.
thank you. Anyone wishing to address the board on the consent calendar, information items, closed session items, or matters not listed on today's agenda may only do so during oral communications. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. The public may comment on all other items at the time they are presented. You will do so by indicating to me that you wish to make public comment by using the raise hand feature located on your Zoom application. And if you are joining us by phone, please push *9, and you will need to unmute yourself by pushing *6. And let me go ahead and check to see if we have any raised hands. Chair Paul, I see no raised hands. I'll return this back to the board.
Very good. Thank you, Joel. So today we have just 2 items on our consent calendar. And you can see what they are, the minutes and the remote teleconferencing resolution. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar? Director Anderson? Thank
I
you.
move that we approve the consent calendar.
Thank you. All right,
Second.
Second. That was Director Edwards, I think.
Yes.
Thank you. And let's have a vote, please.
Director Mallett,
Yes.
Director Edwards,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Aye.
Director Roberson,
Yes.
Director Anderson,
Yes,
Vice Chair Adams, absent, Chair Paul.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Okay. General Manager,
All right.
your time. Your time.
Yes. So I will be brief, but also I was asked to give a little bit of an overview of monkeypox and any impacts here locally or on the water district in general. And you may be aware that monkeypox is a virus spreading around the world and the country. There's been public health emergencies called in 3 states, and then obviously nationally through the president. It's spread primarily through skin-to-skin contact or very close range as an aerosol. And its appearance is a distinct rash of the skin somewhere on the body. And the demand for vaccine is high. But currently, Monterey County Health Department only reports 4 cases through as of August 9th. We're not seeing any impact on staff. Obviously, our primary concern remains COVID. But I did want to let you know that for those of you who may be aware that CAUD has been monitoring COVID in the wastewater stream. And just about 2 weeks ago, the Sewer Coronavirus Alert Network, or SCAN, announced that 11 wastewater agencies would be adding monkeypox to their monitoring. But CAUD has not yet done so. Those 11 in Northern California are primarily Sacramento, Davis, UC Davis, 2 sewer sheds in San Francisco, and then 4 sewer sheds in the Bay Area, primarily Southern Bay Area, and then the city of Gilroy. So we'll continue to monitor. It is not transferred through water. Its location in wastewater is merely an indicator of having come from people. And the treatment system, just as with COVID, will handle the virus. I guess in similar parallel, you may have heard that polio virus has been detected in several wastewater samples in 2 different counties north of New York City. So we're going to begin to see more and more wastewater testing as an indicator of its prevalence in people. What it doesn't distinguish between is who's a visitor and who's a resident, of course, and we've got a high visitor serving community here, but nothing else to declare, unlikely to have significant impact on working conditions or the change over to the building rules with respect to public. So right now the district remains open, even through all the COVID discussion. We've been open to the public since June 1st, and most of staff has been in attendance fairly regularly, and things are going pretty well. And that concludes that report, unless there's any questions.
I have a question. To the chair,
Sure.
how long has it been since the waste districts have had the capacity to do this kind of viral testing?
Yep, it came in the middle of COVID. So, and COD was an early adopter. Interestingly, Monterey One Water chose not to participate. Not sure why. I've heard a couple of different explanations, budget and so forth. But if you go to the Carmel Area Wastewater District's homepage, you don't have to hunt very far, but sitting up in the upper left-hand corner of their homepage is a direct link to their data. And then you can see the number of weeks that reporting has taken place. You can see where it all started. And there's a nice timeline graphic so you can see how seasonally it went up, and then it's starting to come down. It's getting down to, I won't say its lowest level, but it's in the lower range. So it's kind of interesting data.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure. So turning our attention now to the status report on compliance with state board orders and Seaside Basin decision. We're in the middle of summer, so there's not a whole lot to talk about, but I'll let Joelle put the PowerPoint up on the screen, and we're just going to cover a few pages today, not the whole discussion. And next one. Here you can see the two regulatory schemes. The Carmel River Basin is below the quarterly water budget forecast. Now keep in mind, this is through July. So August and September will mark the end of the water year. So we're 2 months away from the completion of a whole year. Over on the right-hand side, you can see that our actuals for the year are also below the target totals for these two resources. But again, the reporting's been a little bit different since we brought Pure Water Monterey online. Next slide. Here you can see the other resources presenting to date. Two things I want to point out. Sand City, we did a report to the Water Supply Planning Committee last week. And in that report, we reported that a new intake well is expected to be completed with all of its, the well itself is, the drilling package is going out at the end of this calendar year, but the whole well will be completed in 2023. So we'll begin to see Sand City production going back up. And then Pure Water Monterey recovery, our contract for 3,500 acre feet is on a fiscal year basis. This chart's on a water year basis. I can tell you so far in the water year, with 2 months remaining, we've delivered 3,034 acre feet. And so a couple of additional months, you'll see highly likely that it'll be at 3,500 both for the fiscal year and the water year. But you can see recovery is a little bit ahead of injection because of that mismatch. So there's some water that was in the ground from months where they've been able to take out more than we've delivered in the water year. And that's just a mismatch of months and dates. But generally speaking, going pretty well there. And then finally, we'll stop on this next chart. And this is monthly production from customer service, again, showing 2 remaining months. And just to highlight here, we're 62 acre feet below the same time last year. And a month ago, we were 78 acre feet below. So, we're tracking the entire year. We've kind of tracked in that range of anywhere from 50 to 100 acre feet, which is a positive because it's a dry year. And, people are difficult to convince not to irrigate in a dry year. But they've shown pretty good behavior. And it looks like we may finish out the year roughly on top of where we were before, which we'll show you in October as a long-term demand curve that I've been showing you in the last few years. We seem to have balanced out or bottomed out. The last 5-year average of this kind of production for customer service was 9,725 acre feet per year. So it looks like we're going to end up in that range again, kind of the 9,500 to 9,700. So keep you posted on that. But the important thing for us and for planning is that we don't see a sudden bump upwards that was unanticipated. So good news for us that we're being consistent. And then I also just wanted to highlight on the fisheries side, at the end of the month of July, a total of 12,408 steelhead had been rescued, and a total of 8,906 have been stocked in the rearing channel, and we have some smaller fish who are still in rectangular troughs. So a very productive year for steelhead rescues, obviously, because we're seeing that the river is pretty much dried up from the Berwick wells in Mid-Valley. So there's isolated pools, but there's not a freely flowing river all the way to the lagoon at this point. And that concludes the GM report for today. Take any questions if you have.
Thank you, Director Riley.
Dave, I know that the data you present on actual and target and actual is slightly different than the records that CalAm maintains for target. I don't know if they use target, but they have actual numbers that are slightly different. Can you explain briefly what those differences are between the CalAm's numbers and our numbers?
Yep. And there's really kind of 4 different data points, but let's talk about the 2 most significant. CalAm has been reporting monthly production for customer service in its Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project website for a number of years, and that's production after treatment. So that would be as it's leaving the Begonia iron removal plant at the wall of the Sand City desal plant. And our numbers are total production basically at the wellhead. So it's a measure of what you have to get out of the ground pre-treatment, pre-losses, pre-fire flows. And then there's another data set, which is customer consumption by political jurisdiction, which we get at the end of every water year. And the difference between production and consumption should represent all of those things I mentioned: fire flow, losses, unaccounted for water, those kinds of things. But the 2 primary reported numbers that we see a lot of are just production. And as I said, we're at the wellhead. What's on that website is after treatment. And so you lose water during iron removal and some of the other localized treatment facilities.
So, I mean, so my kind of quick takeaway from this is that our numbers reflect the impact on the Carmel River. CalAm's numbers reflect their production for customer use.
Yes, but we're also including in their seaside production as well. So, any of the wells that are producing water. So it's just overall production, getting water out of the ground. And now not all our water comes out of the ground. There's that little bit from Sand City desal plant and a little bit from, well, the lot now, over 35% from Pure Water Monterey. But direct diversion from the river, so surface water diversions, pretty much ceased in the early 2000s. So it had been just groundwater or surface water produced from a groundwater well and measured at the production end before it got up the road to the Begonia iron removal plant.
Okay.
I have a question.
Okay.
Dave, do you know if in the past, when the CPUC is looking at demand numbers, do they have both sets of data?
They traditionally haven't. Well, that's not true. They would get both of them from testimony. And so we've always used these numbers for our testimony, which frankly would be a little bit higher because the treatment losses would be a reduction. So, we always like to say, oh, gee, erring in the conservative direction. But mostly it's because this data set has been real consistent for us year in and year out, even before the Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project website. And so we've just continued to stick with it. And it's a very simple concept. It's all the water that gets produced.
Mhm.
And the Urban Water Management Plan, which is a 5-year plan developed by Cal-Am, has tended previously to start with population and then gallons per capita per day. And so you multiply people times usage, and then add losses on top of that and fire flows on top of that, and non-residential water on top of it. So you build it up. It's a built-up forecast. What they've done and we've done in this most recent round is said, don't look at it that way. Let's look at just total production. So we're much more like these numbers that we review with you every month, starting with how much water does the system need before things like losses and unaccounted for, that kind of thing. So it's more of the total water approach.
Thank you. Directors,
Through the chair, if I may,
yes,
Dave, could you tell us, or could you find out before, at our next meeting, what's going on General Jim Moore Road with the ASR sites? And another item I'd like for you to check in for the board is Sleepy Hollow. How we doing out there on Sleepy Hollow? I know we got a few projects going on out there.
Yeah.
I wonder if they're on time or are we behind on that? So
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Thomas can jot that one down and get back to us next month. General Jim, you probably would have seen a big hole in the ground on Wednesday of last week, Wednesday or Thursday. That seemed to be the final interconnection of the parallel pipeline to the Monterey pipeline at the top of Hilby, keeping in mind that there's a pump station down by the Hilby tanks, and they were waiting on some, I think some valving that finally came in and they got that put in the ground. But then further up General Jim, right past our ASR wells number 3 and 4, or Cal-Am's ASR wells number 3 and 4, towards the golf course, there's a new pad with a bunch of pipes and valves on it. And that is the turnout for the Marina Coast Water District's deliveries to the golf courses on their recycled water project. They haven't started those deliveries yet, but that's what that's all about.
okay, and one more up there. It looked like at the ASR site on the Cal-Am side of where the school at, you got a big crane up there. Are they repairing a well or
Yeah,
cleaning
so
one?
that's across the street, and the Peralta well had a little blowout due to how some equipment was installed, and so water was going up 20 feet into the sky for a period of time, and that repair was being done. I think that's why the rig was in. That just happened like a week ago.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
thank you. Other questions for General Manager?
Madam Chair, I see that Mr. Tully does have a comment from the public.
Thank you. Well, let's give the floor to Mr. Tully and the other members of the public that have asked to speak.
Mr. Tilley, John Tilley.
Mr. Tilly, excuse me.
Sarah, can you share the timer? All right, good to go. And at this time, I would like to invite John Tilley. John, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you, board members. Just in terms of the supply and demand numbers, or actually the theory of it, it's difficult to hear that demand is being met or that demand has been steady over the past few years. What has been steady is supply. It's been insufficient. The classic in this example is demand supply terms insulin. And this is as if you're an insulin producer and this is if you're an insulin producer and you're saying that because 100% of our product has been bought, therefore we're meeting demand. It's not the case. The demand that exists far outpaces the supply that is being provided. And with the risk around the supply that is being provided, it's really time to hear more about the future of our water supply here versus, what we have these days, and really the potential for DSL to be part of the solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tilley. And are there any other members of the public who've raised their hands?
Chair Paul, I see no raised hands, so I'll return this back to the board.
Okay, thank you. Then, General Counsel, you have a report for us?
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, and members of the public. There was no closed session as part of tonight's agenda, but the board did meet in closed session last month on July 18th. The closed session began at 5. The portion of the session that was took place between 5 and 6 p.m. has already been reported upon, but the board did not complete its discussions at that time and reconvened in closed session following your open session. And there were 2 items on that agenda. There was a discussion of the cybersecurity assessment and report. And also there was conference with labor negotiators concerning the general staff and management units. As to both items, the board was provided an update and posed questions, received responses, but no reportable action was taken. In addition, I'd like to point out that we are going to have, our office is going to be conducting another AB 1234 Ethics and Brown Act session on Wednesday at the end of this month on August 31st in the morning from 9 to 11. And if anyone needs their refresher course, you're welcome to have that. There is no charge. And if you contact the district or my office, we'll make sure that you have the attendance information. It is all remotely attended via Zoom. So look forward to having a good audience. That concludes. Yes.
Can you remind us how often directors are supposed to?
Directors have an obligation to complete that once every 2 years, 2 hours of contact training.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
if I may, General Counsel, no word yet on any of our lawsuits or anything. Taxpayers, LAFCO, or?
No, justice works in a very slow manner. The administrative record is still not filed in the LAFCO action. It's still not filed in the MPTA, and our action, our writ to the appellate court does not yet have any date for briefing.
All right, thank you. I just want to keep the public informed. They asked about them. Thank you.
Certainly.
I appreciate your asking the question, Director Edwards. I've been pestering our general counsel. Is it ready yet? Is it ready? Is the administrative record from LAFCO certified yet? And it's taking a long time.
Yes, we're getting closer.
Yeah, I think Joelle got the last item needed for the taxpayers lawsuit just last week. So I think that should be all wrapped up with a bow pretty soon.
Well, this is a perfect segue to the part of our meeting where directors can report on any outside meetings they've attended, because I attended the special district quarterly meeting. Dave Stolt did as well. And the subject there was the RENA numbers. We had a presenter who explained how all of those numbers are determined in great detail. But the only item of particular interest that I recall from that is, Dave, you asked when the next round of numbers would be available. And if I remember correctly, they said November.
Yeah, so that was an update to the growth forecast. But what we've been learning is, so AMBAG is on a 4-year cycle for updating their metropolitan transportation plan and their sustainability our sustainable community strategies, which is a combined document, which frankly has a name of like Moving Monterey County Forward 2045. The RENA numbers have been considered in that most recent one, and the growth forecast further considers the RENA numbers. So they're all tied together, all three of those. And they go through about a 2-year process between draft and adoption. So we are now less concerned that we're awaiting a new growth forecast that will accommodate the 6th cycle of RENA numbers, because we're much more comfortable now that the population numbers that were released in November of 2021 are the same ones that were approved June 15th of 2022. I'm sorry, it was November of 2020. So that growth forecast has been out there, almost a full 2 years. And it's the same growth forecast that they're using in this Moving Monterey County Forward 2045 report. So the more we've learned, the tidier it all gets, that they're all kind of self-reflective on each other, and that the documents are consistent, which is good for us.
Good. Any other directors want to tell us about meetings of outside other agencies, other jurisdictions, meetings to report? Doesn't look like it. All right.
Wait, 1 second there. There goes my hand.
Director Edwards,
Yeah, just
didn't mean to cut
reported.
you off.
No problem, ma'am. I appreciate you giving me a chance. But me and George Riley attended the Cal-Am community meetings, the one in Seaside and the one in Marina. The one in Seaside, the advertisement wasn't as well as the one in Marina was, but we had a nice showing. Plus, Cal-Am did a nice little presentation in Seaside, but the one in Marina was the main one where they answered questions and worked around things. But my thoughts on that, they did a good job on them. I feel that I heard from one of our citizens on the peninsula saying we should do the same thing, set up some meetings with the community and talk about what's going on. So, George, you can help me out there.
Okay.
Director Riley, yes, you would like to add to that?
Well, yeah, I was looking for new information from Cal-Am, and they didn't have any new information. But what they did do is get a pretty good crowd, at least at the CSUMB meeting on Tuesday night. And I kind of think Alvin's got a good point here that if you announce a meeting on water, people come. But if you don't tell them anything new or kind of give them the landscape of what they can expect, then it's a useless thing. So I'm thinking I'm going to support Alvin's idea that maybe we should do something, but we should have something to say. We should have something to say, either what we're doing, what balls are in the air, where some of them might land, and what we're working on for the future. But we need to. It's a decent format for those who are kind of tuned into water, and Cal-Am proves that they can get a crowd. They just didn't do a very good job providing any information for the public.
Was there an opportunity for the public to speak or ask questions?
There was, but it was like a Q&A, but a capital Q and a lowercase a. There just wasn't much information available, but lots of questions and lots of comments. Negative comments, basically, about. I'll just add.
I don't want to put a damper on it like that, George. But the questions were asked. And I think the citizen told me that, hey, we should do that, have one of those. And I like what we did at the beginning of Measure J, where the GM went around to each community and spoke on it. So, I know we're going through another phase. I hope we can do that at the end of the phase that we're going through with Measure J and put a cap on it so everybody can say they heard it or didn't hear it. All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Very excellent and timely suggestions that we will pursue. Probably we can discuss in the Public Outreach Committee meeting first, which is coming up in about a week, I think. And then maybe at the next board meeting after that. We'll be thinking about that more. Okay, if there are no other
Chair Paul,
reports.
I do see one raised hand. I don't know if you want to
Oh.
recognize the.
Yes, yes,
okay.
of course.
Sarah, can you share the timer? I'll go ahead and, okay. And at this time, I would like to invite John Tilley. John, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you, board members. I attended that meeting also. And yeah, it really was a capital Q and a small case A, but at least it was a listening session. And there was information there. There was multiple stations set up that people would go and ask questions directly, which is really quite cool, of prominent water people. Just really engage them in conversation about various topics, because different stations had various topics involved. There was way too much yelling. There was way too much posturing with just anger. We get that people have been upset about the water situation around here for good reason. I'd say one of the biggest takeaways I had from the evening was just a concern that the Marine Coast Water District and that marina itself is growing leaps and bounds, that is building a subdivision complex up there that rivals Orange County and is pulling water straight out of the aquifer to do it. And meanwhile, is saying that they're concerned that the peninsula's water needs might hurt them. It just seemed like a great disconnect to me that a community that is pulling the water straight out of the aquifer is blocking the attempts of the peninsula to find non-aquifer solutions to consumer consumption. And I think it's really important to recognize that they live on a different aquifer than we do. Ours is a seaside basin, and we need to be allowed by the community of Marina to find our solutions. And it's really your charge as a water district to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tilley. I see another raised hand.
Melody, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Melody Crislock, Public Water Now. So I was at that same meeting that John Tilley was at, and Marina was there in force, as were a lot of Peninsula residents, and Callahan got a real earful. The problem was that when asked, they could not explain how they were going to lower the cost of water, and they could not explain how we could need so much water. Those are the two big questions that Callahan needs to answer, and they can't answer them. Of course, those were just their engineers and Josh Stratton, and no, he could not answer much yet. He's really new, but he was telling the press some things that I found questionable and shocking, as in, well, the desal would provide more water for CSIP. And I thought, oh boy, I hope not. It's bad enough that we would have to subsidize the Castroville water at, $6,000 an acre foot, let alone CSIP water at $6,000 an acre foot. Yeah, there was some strange statement made there. And I think the Peninsula really told Callahan they didn't want the desal, but of course, Callahan was not listening. So it will be interesting to see. The idea that Marina should back off, I totally disagree with. Those wells, the slant wells are in the groundwater basin of Marina. Everybody knows that. That's why they have to do the return water agreement. If it was really all ocean water, they wouldn't have to do the return water agreement. So Marina has every right to protect its groundwater basin. And that desal plant of CalAM's is never going to solve the real problem. Now that we know that the city of Salinas and Egg is this huge draw that is actually affecting the Seaside Basin via the Monterey Subbasin, CalAM's desal is useless in really solving the regional problem. And what we need is a regional desal, not a little desal in Marina that gives only the peninsula massive amounts of water that it could never use in 200 years. So yes, it was an interesting meeting. Thanks. That's good.
Thank you, Melody. I
And at
see,
this time, I would like to invite Susan Giovanni. Susan, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Thank you. Good evening. I did attend both of those meetings as well. I did talk to Josh Stratton and told him my opinions about the desal plant and why I was opposed to it. And no, Marina should not back off. There's obvious environmental issues with that plant. And to see Josh Stratton quoted in the paper saying that they would not be damaging plover habitat. They've already damaged plover habitat with what they've done so far. And that was one of the most productive plover habitat areas around the bay that they have chosen to put the desal plant on. They haven't resolved the issue of the vernal ponds. They haven't resolved a lot of issues around that plant that are totally, it's just not a good idea, period. And they're not going to be able to environmentally complete what they need to do to have a complete application for this. So I'm terribly opposed to that. And I think CalAM needed to hear that strongly and to know that, you know, really the bottom line is CalAM needs to go, Measure J needs to be enacted and pursued, and we need to have a public water agency. Should desal be in the future, it should not be that plant. Thank you.
thank you, Susan. Are there other members of the public who are asking to speak? I don't see any.
Paul, I see no raised hands, so I'll return this back to the board.
Thank you. All right. If there are no further comments on those outside meetings or other outside meetings, let's turn to the two public hearing items we have on our agenda tonight.
Okay, the first one will be handled by Stephanie Locke, and this is on the ordinance that enacts the measure that you took to recommend for Montage's fourth building on the Ryan Ranch campus. Stephanie?
Thank you. Joelle, do you want to go ahead? So this is considering the first reading of ordinance number 192 to define Montage Health's main campus, the Carmel Hill Professional Center, and Ryan Ranch's campus as a site for purposes of the hospital water use limit. And I'm not going to go through every detail of the staff report because I think there was sufficient detail in there for the board, but I will just quickly summarize it. And if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer those. So the ordinance is here for first reading. Montage Health was approved what was called a hospital water use limit. And we refer to that in our rules and regulations as a water use capacity, and it is defined in Rule 11. They were given this water use limit of 119.28 acre feet by the board in 2003. Staff has reviewed the actual consumption over time, and there remains about 37 acre feet available for other purposes. At the last board meeting, the board directed staff to combine the hospital campuses so that the Ryan Ranch facility could take advantage of the unused capacity for a building that they have an immediate need for. That proposed building will actually probably be used to relocate some of the services from the Holman Highway campus, which is the main hospital, such as the cancer center and perhaps some other uses. They will be moved over to the Ryan Ranch campus. So there's an immediate need for this action right now. What this ordinance does is adds a new definition, and that new definition is the community hospital site. And that site is specified in the staff report. We've listed the assessor parcel numbers for a number of different APs, parcel numbers. And that includes the main hospital, the Carmel Hills Professional Center, which is right adjacent to the hospital on Holman Highway, the Ryan Ranch campus, which I think is at 2 Ragsdale. And then there are 2 vacant parcels in Ryan Ranch that after we had discussions with the hospital, those 2 parcels were asked to be added into this definition of site. The hospital water use limit would then be available to all of those specified parcels. So if they have construction taking place at the main hospital on Holman Highway, that construction takes place under the hospital water use limit, as does any construction that would take place on those other parcels located in Ryan Ranch. Next. We've done similar definitions in the past. Most recently, I think it was last summer, the Department of Defense site was adopted. Prior to that, we had the primary and secondary public school district sites, so that each school district in our water district, if they met all of the commercial water efficiency requirements, they would not have to obtain additional water. We had adopted a definition for accredited institutions of higher education site to assist Middlebury with its campus expansions. And we also have the jurisdiction sites, which allows a jurisdiction to move water credits throughout all the properties that the city owns. In addition to this water use cap that we've been discussing, I just wanted to point out that Montage actually purchased water from 2 different seaside entitlement holders to be able to build 2 of the buildings that are on the Ryan Ranch campus. And they bought 7.17 acre feet. So that 7.17 would actually be additive to the hospital water use cap. And that would remain at the Ryan Ranch site. So we would look at that purchased water first. Next. So this evening, the Water Demand Committee recommended approval of this concept. An initial study has been prepared and will be circulated prior to second reading, and the board will consider a negative declaration at the adoption. You should receive public comment this evening and then approve the first reading of ordinance 192. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer this.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. I found the memo very clear, very well done, very clear, and I appreciated your including the background, a bit of the history and the examples of when the district has done combined site definition, has used that approach before for similar reasons. So it was all very clear, and I just want to thank you. So we're going to take public comment, but do any of the directors want to say something before we do that?
Just a brief compliment, a little bit like what Karen is saying, but I remember the alternatives that were presented to us before, and they got pretty complicated as possibilities. But I just appreciate the conceptual approach that was presented here. And we're retaining that conceptual approach to, selected jurisdictional issues because it's logical. And I just appreciate finding a straightforward, logical approach to what appeared to be a complex issue at one point. I just appreciate staff work on this so much. So thank you.
That's exactly how I felt. I forgot, I want to add to what I said earlier that I also have to thank staff for going through more than 8 years of records of usage that must have been a very tedious task. But we needed that information, and thank you for digging through that and getting it to us.
We're
Other
good at
comments?
tedious. Yeah, I was just gonna say, we're good at tedious.
Yeah. Some things you just, yeah. All right, thank you. And let's take it out to see if the members of the public wish to speak about this proposed ordinance.
Yes, so if you would like to make public comment on item number 6, please raise your hand on your Zoom application, or if you're joining us by phone tonight, please push star 9. Chair Paul, I see no raised hands.
Well, that surprises me a little bit, but then we have no public comment to consider at this time, but I guess members of the public could always email if they have something to say about this. So it's my understanding that we have been asked to approve the first reading.
If I may, I would make a motion for the approval of the first reading of the ordinance.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you.
And under discussion, I think there is precedent that makes a lot of sense, and it enables Montage, I think, to fulfill its mission. So great work by staff and just a lot of good common sense here.
Thank you for that. I totally agree. Other comments or discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Director Edwards,
Approval?
Director Riley,
Aye.
Director Roberson,
Yes.
Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Malik,
Yes.
Vice Chair Adams, absent, Chair Paul,
Yes,
the motion carries.
thank you. And our second item,
Yeah, so
Another
this one
ordered-
is, this one is a second reading. You saw this ordinance the first time on June 18th. And just the way our board meeting dates were scheduled, we couldn't get 30 days of public review out there if we heard this in July, so it got moved to August. So there's been plenty of time. And so the recommendation is that the board adopt ordinance number 191, which would eliminate the Carmel River Advisory Committee in favor of the much bigger set of stakeholders who attend the Carmel River Task Force.
thank you. So it seems pretty simple. Any questions or comments?
I have a question to Dave. Who convenes? How do those meetings, the Carmel Task Force?
Yeah, so Thomas is here. Maybe he could answer that. It seems that it's typically the Carmel
Watershed
River.
Conservancy, yeah.
Yeah.
So the Conservancy has an executive director that used to be Lauren Latund, and now it's Abby Bean, and they send out meetings on kind of a quarterly basis to have a task force meeting. And in the last, obviously 2 years they've been on Zoom, but they've often been before that at the district in the conference room with up to as many as 25 people gathering for those meetings.
Thank you. That was my question.
And I may have missed this. Did you say how often they meet?
Yeah, it's about quarterly.
Yeah, through the chair too, Dave and Thomas, do we send a thank you note or anything, or generate some plaques for the Carmel River people that was on that committee for quite a while?
Yeah, we typically send thank you letters or a certificate, like when members have been on for a long time and left. Our most recent members have been fairly new, except with a couple of them. So what we did is before we started this process, we were kind of inviting those members to the Carmel River Task Force meetings, and they attended several of them. So what I would do if when we finalize the actions of the Carmel River Advisory Committee, would send a thank you to those members that are participating, and then invite them to stay involved if they so choose to be.
Thank you. I appreciate that because some are appointed and they've been around there a long time. So just to say goodbye to them or offer them something else is quite all right. So thank you.
Okay.
All right, so is there a motion to, this is the first to accept the first reading of this proposal?
No, this would be adoption. This is the second reading.
Oh, this is the second reading. You are right, you said that. Excuse me. Okay.
Subject to any
Is there a
public
motion?
comments, I move approval.
Second.
Okay, if there are no raised hands, let us
Take it out
take
to
a
the
vote.
public. You need to take it out to the public, Chair Paul.
Yeah,
So if you would like to make public comment on item number 7, please raise your hand, or if you're calling in, push *9. Chair Paul, I see no raised hands.
thank you, Joel. Any comments before we entertain a motion? Okay. Is there a motion to adopt this?
Yes, the motion has been
Oh.
made
Oh,
by
and
Director Riley
second.
and seconded by Director Edwards. So we're ready for a roll call vote.
Go to,
Director Riley,
Aye.
Director Edwards,
Yes.
Director Malik,
Yes.
Director Roberson,
Aye.
Director Anderson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Adams, absent, Chair Paul.
yes,
The motion is adopted.
thank you. And now we are up to our action item 8. Our general manager, are you going to kick this off?
Yes, thank you very much. This is an action item to authorize expenditure of funds for a team of 3 consultants who will provide appraisal-related services for the Measure J proposed acquisition of the Monterey Water System of California American Water. This is to make up for lost time caused by the lengthy, protracted LAFCO application review. We were on approach for getting a final appraisal package put together in roughly October, November of 2020. And then the LAFCO process really kind of dragged things out. So we never asked the primary, or what I call the prime consultant, to prepare the overall appraisal report. We had, however, gotten a real estate appraiser to look at the CalAm parcels, and subsequently that information has gotten stale. And our prime consultant has requested that we have a third party formally evaluate the water rights portion. We talked to several firms who can do that work, one of which turned out to be conflicted out because they had provided some work on the CalAm MRV appraisal during the election season in 2018. Nevertheless, the team that we have together put into place is eminently well qualified, has terrific professional credentials, in general are already familiar with the job at hand. And I've included a schedule on the second page. It didn't translate into the electronic package as nicely as I thought it would. I think it looks better in the PDF version than the HTML version. But the total budget at the bottom of the first page, $315,000, includes just a little bit of contingency. The prime consultant did say that they think they will be able to come in lower. So I'm just treating it as if it has contingency in there. And the same with the real estate appraisal. The schedule on the last page shows that you would authorize today, we would, upon your approval, authorize our eminent domain attorneys to resubmit or re-release the notice of intent to appraise. We had taken that action previously. That's where you get the oh hell no letter back from the company, which basically says we're not for sale. You don't have the power to acquire us. Why are you even doing this? And you certainly cannot come onto our site to do an appraisal. Good luck. But that would initiate the process again. And then our team is a little bit controlled by the individual who's doing the water rights appraisal. They were most comfortable with the draft at the end of November, with a final at the end of December, which is why you see the orange bars leading all the way to the end of the calendar year. Simultaneous with about last few months of that process, we will begin to get a draft offer to acquire. And then the light blue bar represents about 4 months of really cleaning up the findings in support of a draft resolution of necessity. And we would be prepared to have a hearing of public necessity, roughly the middle of February. And then there would be a response to that. And then ultimately the condemnation action gets filed. There's an answer period to that. And then we would be off to the races, if you will, in the courts on the bench trial at that point. If you decide in your discretionary authority that that's something you want to do. But this would prepare you, as we discussed previously, a formal appraisal gives you the strongest position rather than just making an offer that can't be drawn back to a formal appraisal. It will be prepared with professional standards, what's called the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. Our primary consultant has the initials after his name from the professional association. The real estate appraiser and the water rights appraiser both are MAIs. So I think it's a terrific team. It'll be a lengthy and expensive undertaking, but it will get you to the next step the board needs to make the decision to make an offer.
Thank you, Dave, for preparing all this for us, and including the timeline and all the materials you gave us. All the information was very clear. I found very clear. Timeline is very helpful to have that laid out this way. I have one question, and we'll see if other directors have questions, and that is have the for the consultants that have given us bids for the work, have conflicts checks been completed for them?
Yes.
Thank you.
And the real estate appraiser, we've previously done that. Obviously, our prime contractor you're familiar with, and it was a part of our request to the water rights appraisers.
Very good. Questions from directors? Director Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. Dave, you mentioned how this could be done in the newspaper, the Herald. Could you tell us how this could be done for the public so it can go on record? How we can approach this? If they say no, we can't look into their company or whatever. Is there other ways that we can do this?
Yeah, and it's very typical. And what you may find is that, or what you will find is, the appraisal will be changed throughout the process. Prior to evaluation trial, everyone's going to sharpen their pencils again. Typically, prior to a condemnation proceeding, you will not gain access to the facilities that you're going to appraise. But remember, an enterprise appraisal is built on, roughly 3 different approaches. One is a comparable sales approach. So looking through to other acquisitions on a dollar per connection, dollar per account, dollar per customer basis. There's ways to get into the right ballpark. There's also the business enterprise valuation, where you make a projection of the revenues and discount them back to a current dollar figure. That can be done based on certain filings that have already occurred, with adjustments made for some of the central satellites being taken out and so forth. And then the third is, replacement costs. Sometimes it's replacement costs new, less depreciation. Some entities have argued just for replacement cost, less depreciation as the book value, which is its original value. But those pieces of information are possible to find out there. There's depreciation studies, there's certain filings within the results of operations models and the minimum data requirements that are filed in rate cases and elsewhere. So there is information out there to do that style of valuation. The real estate is done based on parcels, and those are identified, and basically you set up a series of comparables to the current market. And then water rights, there are methods out there for water rights valuation. And our consultant knows those methods, and we'll work with them at getting the information they need, as well as the water rights themselves. So there is a way to put it all together. It's going to be your best estimate of cost. You may recall in our review of the public code, the public agency is supposed to approve an appraisal, and we would be weak to go in without a formal appraisal. So all the parts are there, but without the on-site visit, you're not really going to know for sure the condition, and there are condition-based assessments that will occur once you get further into that. Once the condemnation action is filed, we will be granted certain rights to enter the premises, and we'll have a team that will be airlifted in for the few days that you can do it. And otherwise, pretty much restricted to just drive by. But it's not atypical for making a proposal prior to filing the condemnation action.
Okay, thank you, Jim. And just one more, Chair, if I may, General Counsel, I know you can be stopped doing anything you want if you go the right way. But are we clear on this, that we can do this at this time?
We have a very sound, well thought out theory as to how we can do that. And that's the basis upon which this effort is being made. We can anticipate that it may be challenged. We can anticipate that there may be a court review of this, but we are not doing this without thought, research, and a sound theory behind us.
Thank you, General Manager and General Counsel. That's all I got for that.
Thank
right
you.
now.
Yes, so just to frame the discussion a little bit, recall that we, the board, asked the general manager and general counsel to map out for us how we could proceed, move forward to try to implement Measure J. We all know that our constituents are really frustrated that Measure J seems to be, that all these obstacles have been placed in the way of Measure J, and we knew that would be the case. So our job is to remove those obstacles and move Measure J forward, as long as it appears to be in the public interest and to benefit the public. And so we asked you to prepare, basically look at the next steps. How could we go forward despite LAFCO's decision to of last May, which is being reviewed by court now. So, and you've done that, and you've done, from what I can tell, a really good job. I read all the materials carefully. The consultants seem very, very well qualified for this work. And these steps, do you want it, the question now for the board is, do you want to go ahead, authorize the funds and take these steps so that we can move forward in the way that's been laid out to try and implement Measure J? What do you think?
Madam Chair, you should go out to the public on this.
Thank you. That's why I'll bring it up. Do the public first and then come back.
Public first. I agree. There's at least one person. Mr. Tilley has raised his hand, I
So if
see.
you would like to make public comment on item number 8, please raise your hand. Or if you're joining us by phone, please push number 9. Sarah, all right, good to go. At this time, I would like to invite John Tilley. John, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you, board members. Thanks for this conversation. This is really front and center in so many ways. Measure J obviously spills way over onto the side of supply. What I'm hoping that you're discussing in closed session is the risks that are involved with Measure J. It's not being discussed in this open session, and it should be. I think the public really needs to be aware of the risks that are involved with potentially taking this down the road you're going and not succeeding. There's examples out there, in California, of what can happen to a community that doesn't succeed with the efforts you're taking. And I think it's just really in your public service mode important to discuss the risk as well. Because all you're discussing really is just, this is what we want to do, this is what we intend to do, but it's not fair for this community not to hear the risks that are involved. And you know them, but you're not discussing them. I went back and I looked on YouTube at some of the early Public Water Now forums that were in the area. Never once kind of contemplated the risk that you should be discussing, or even the expenditures that are currently being discussed. So please, just for many reasons, bring a balanced approach forward so that the decisions that you're making are fully vetted, fully exposed to the community, and just for all good reasons, transparent completely, because that's what we deserve. I think that, and you've put yourself in a position where you're pursuing a legal strategy, and therefore you have to communicate in a certain way that follows that legal strategy. But in terms of bringing information to the public, it's not complete, and it's really one-sided. So could you start to really discuss the potential risks that are involved with what you're doing? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tilley. We have.
At this time, I would like to invite Susan Schiavone. Susan, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Thank you, Joelle. Well, you know me, I support pursuing Measure J, and it is the legal mandate that was voted by the voters. So the district really has to legally pursue Measure J. And it seems to me that all of this issue about risk, there was a feasibility study done that showed that it's feasible. There was further studies done during the LAFCO hearings by consultants saying that this was perfectly feasible to do and it wouldn't have a bad effect on the county. I think you need to go forward, and I support you pursuing going in this direction. And I think it would be very important to have some workshops or have some information sessions for the public. Whatever risks there are, certainly we want to look at them, be realistic about it, And I don't think you'll make decisions that are not good for the public. So I'm going to entrust your decision-making, and I think you've done a good job so far. So I'm going to have faith in that and know that we're going forward on this, and Measure J should be pursued. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Susan. We have another
Yes, at
raised
this
hand.
time, yes, at this time, I would like to invite Melody Crislock. Melody, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Melody Crislock. Yeah, the risks of remaining with Cal-Am are pretty outrageous. We're already in trouble. You know, so I remember one of their attorneys, Sanoff or Connors, I don't know which one, was going on about could be $20 million lost in legal fees, and it's like, gee, you guys, you know, we got docked $64 million for the water we didn't use in the last drought by Cal-Am. I mean, they don't really understand the scale of disaster that Cal-Am has visited upon this community. And I find it really interesting that people like Josh Stratton put in, you know, their quotes in the Herald that the Water Management District shouldn't be wasting its time on Measure J, and it should be finding new water. As if you guys haven't already found plenty of new water. I think it's something like 7,000 acre feet, Cal-Am 0. But the thing that I don't understand about a statement like that from Stratton is, what is he advising you to break the law and just ignore the voter mandated Measure J? I mean, I guess some of our public agencies like LAFCO seemed fine with just going against whatever the voters, but you have a legal duty to do this. So I don't understand exactly how, it's not Stratton only, there's a couple of people that have been saying, oh, the Water Management District should be just focused on water. They have no idea how much water you guys have already provided the community. I think the last time I heard Dave say it was 7,000 acre feet, including the 3,500 from Pure Water Monterey in partnership with Monterey One. But you know, the perspective here is all wrong. You know, when I hear John Tilley say, oh, there's a risk here, it's like, yeah, there's a huge risk on the other side. And that's why the framers of Measure J decided that we needed to get out from under Cal-Am, because the risk moving forward with Cal-Am is huge. When Kevin Tilden, I asked Ian Crooks, you know, at the Tuesday meeting, what's your plan to lower the water costs? And he just looked at me like, well, I guess we could get rid of the tiers. And I thought, really? That's going to lower the water costs? Because Cal-Am isn't going to take less money, and they're just going to reallocate who's paying it. So, yeah, please, I am so excited to see this finally moving forward. Thank you so much for all of the work you've put into this, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Melody. Who else do we have?
Yes, so the number ending in 312. To unmute yourself, you'll need to push *6, and you may identify yourself for the clerk's record. Again, the phone. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can
Hello?
hear you.
Yes.
Oh, okay, great, because I kept getting a voice talking to me. You're muted or unmuted. Good evening, everyone. My name is Margaret Ann Coppernall. I congratulate you also for your courage and the excellent work in proceeding with Measure J efforts. First, I would like to know if the real estate and/or water rights appraisals will cover environmental injustice aspects. The Coastal Commission references environmental injustice as a specific issue pertaining to the desal project. There is a large discrepancy between the amount of water used by ag interest, especially the deep or antique aquifer, and the amount used by non-ag interest. There needs to be a fair quantitative balance in water usage, I'm sorry, I was starting to speak in French, water usage and conservation efforts among overlying water rights owners and consequences for illegal aquifer extractions and overpumping. The buyout is necessary because CalAm desal is infeasible. In the Chapter 2 of its EIR, it was required that CalAm prove it had water rights or its desal project would be deemed infeasible. And so far, they have no water rights either in the Salinas Valley groundwater basin aquifers or the ocean. Second, will the Water District consider investigating the findings revealed in the scientific peer-reviewed article by Ron Weitzman published in the American Statistical Association journal, Chance, this past November? The independent hydrogeologist analysis found data tampering in the model calibrations for the two EIR models CalAm submitted for approval to both the CPUC and other permit granting agencies. This false reporting should be examined as it was a fraudulent attempt to circumvent the true status of the Slantwell aquifer extractions. Data corruption was noted multiple times in the past, but either ignored or covered up. At the high cost of this project from a financial, environmental, and integrity viewpoint, it does appear to be a felonious offense against the public. It seems that the history of false reporting and surreptitious actions taken to deceive decision makers and the public should be cause for criminal investigations and constitute solid grounds for removing desalination project costs from inclusion in the buyout transaction. Ratepayers should not be responsible to shoulder the burden of the abhorrent deceptions and false data reporting used to prolong for so many years a project that from the very beginning had no sound foundation to proceed. I recommend that you refer to an article that contains a graph on this water issue of the spiking in the aquifers by David Schmaltz that was published in the Monterey Weekly on August 11th. So God bless you and thank you for listening, and I applaud all the hard work that you're doing, and it is extremely worthwhile and very, very much appreciated.
At this time, I would like to invite Anna Thompson. Anna, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Yes, my name is Anna Thompson, Carmel, and I approve proceeding with proceeding with Measure J efforts, and I share 100% the views that the prior speakers said so eloquently, and I don't speak as well. So please, thank you very much, actually, to continue and proceed with this. We cannot afford to keep CalAm, and the risk of keeping CalAm is much, much greater than it is the risk that we might fail. So thank you, and I appreciate all your work. Thank you again.
Thank you, Anna. Are there other members of the public who would like to speak? I don't see any on my...
Chair Paul, I see no raised hands, so I return this back to the board.
Thank you. And now is our time to discuss. Director Riley.
I'd like to move approval, but I have comments during board discussion.
I do too. Maybe we all do.
I'll second that so we can have that discussion.
Okay.
And perhaps before you do have discussion, just on one point about the risks, I don't think it can be said that the district has ever shied away from openly talking about the risks of a failed effort. It was front and center as a discussion point in our November 2019 public session, and it was repeated and discussed in much communication during the LAFCO application process. So it's out there, it's been out there. We've talked about the difference between pay-as-you-go and being saddled with another defendant's legal costs and how they're not the same thing. We've also discussed how the those costs can be paid. So, and I'm sure we'll talk about it again, but it's important to know that we've never shirked our duty to tell the public what the risks of failure are.
Absolutely. Okay, other comments? I have some too, but I want to let other directors have a chance to speak first. So if you, let's, comments on the motion. Director Malek.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think we've been discussing this for years, and the decision to proceed is pretty much upon us. It is our responsibility to do what the public wants and act accordingly. And so I don't know what else can we discuss other than just take a vote. Thank you.
So some directors might have some comments to make, but thank you for that. All right, Director Riley.
Yeah, I have comments about the appraisal process, and I'm not asking for a response. I just want these considered by the consultants. You mentioned that the 218 process for low-income rate subsidy. I want to include rebates in that process. I'm sure it's on somebody's list, but anyway, I just want to remind people of that. I have questions about right-of-ways and easements, and I assume that's in the real estate or some part of the analysis. I just want to make sure it's covered. I have two other very specific points on the Carmel River. The San Clemente Dam removal was considered an asset by Cal-Am and the PUC. I don't see that as anything that we're buying. So however it's listed on the books, it's something that has no bearing on what the acquisition is, in my opinion, but I just want to make sure it's on the list. Los Padres Dam is either an asset or a liability. We don't know which. and the future decision around that is going to be an expense. So I just hope that gets serious consideration or evaluation by our consultants. And I do want to just support the comment that was made by one member of the public. It was Marianne Coppernoll. Environmental justice issues, I don't know how or if they're going to be included, but I just don't want that to be left off the list for consideration. The last thing I want to just comment on is goodwill. I think there's a lot of lost goodwill that Cal-Am has experienced over the years, and the public has demonstrated that in its votes and its public participation hearings and so on. I just don't know how that is going to ultimately play out in the consideration, but I think there's a lot of evidence that whatever value that Cal-Am might put on goodwill is compromised by what much of the community thinks about Cal-Am. And that's it for me.
Madam Chair, Madam Chairman, may I just interject to affect some of the others' thinking without addressing all of those points? Rights of way may be a challenge because we don't have all of the legal descriptions and they don't all appear as parcels. So there will be some things that will be challenging, but then some of the other things that were mentioned, regulatory assets, future liabilities, these are things that might not find their way into the appraisal because we're actually appraising the property that's owned at the time we're making the offer, but would enter into severance damage discussion at the jury trial. So it's, think about it, and this will be shocking for some people. We're not going to make an offer on a desal plant that doesn't exist. This is going to be on assets that exist at the time of the offer. And so clearly, if it's a protracted battle and new assets are added and certain assets are fully depreciated and go offline, it'll be a moving target during the whole process. But the starting point is what it is we can see that we can buy, whether you've got plans for that addition to your family room. We're not buying the plans and we're not buying the addition. We're buying what's there currently, or at least offering to.
So I believe the general manager answered one of my questions. The severance package is going to have a different appraisal to it. Correct me? So
Yeah, and there's a high degree of likelihood that we would go through an update of the appraisal prior to a valuation trial, because both parties have to come in with their best valuation at that point in time as well. So there may be a couple rounds.
okay, and like I said, I'm going to support the motion. And I want to thank the general manager and general counsel for all the good hard work they're doing on this. They're answering the right questions the way they should be answered, and I appreciate that. I appreciate all the good work y'all doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Edwards. I appreciate it too. I appreciate all the work you've put in on this and continue to do. All right, I'd like to say a few things. First, of course, I am going to support the motion. On the comment that keeps being made about we should concentrate on water supply, not Measure J, and I just want to put that to rest. We concentrate on, it's not either or, it's both, and we concentrate on water supply and Measure J. They're both extremely important issues for the, and they are both our job, and we are doing both, and we will continue to responsibly move forward solutions to the water supply and to try to find a way, if we can, to do what the voters voted for, to have a publicly owned water system on the Monterey Peninsula. On risks, as our general manager has said very well, there's no mystery about the risks, really. I mean, it'd be impossible we're all very well aware of the risks. They were, Cal-Am beat the drum to death during the LAFCO hearing about the risks of litigation. And essentially said, we're going to make it too expensive for you. We're going to drive up the cost so much with litigating everything that you just won't be able to afford it. And you can't risk that. That's basically what Cal-Am was saying during the LAFCO hearing. And we know that that's their main defense, is to make it as expensive as possible through litigating. And not, it's really sad, because if we could sit down as responsible adults and negotiate a buyout agreement based on professional appraisals, we could save the public so much money and so much time. The hundreds of thousands of dollars, the LAFCO process cost us, correct me if I'm wrong, a general manager, it was over $280,000. That cost us, and more than a year, and Cal-Am can try to do that with eminent domain and so on. And that's what we expect them to do, because that's been their MO. That's been American Water's MO around the country. They don't want to give up businesses that are profitable for them. But we've always known this. And with litigation, there's always a risk of losing. There's always a risk that you'll have to pay. In many cases, you may have to pay attorney's fees if you lose. We know all these risks. We know what they are. As our general manager said, we have specifically discussed how we would deal with those risks and scenarios where we might not prevail in certain litigation, and how we would pay for it, and how we would deal with that, and what financial reserves we've set aside, and all of that. So I think we are all very well aware of the risks, is how I look at it. And I also think a point on risk, Melody Crislock made a really good point, which is, what's the risk of not trying to buy out Cal-Am? The risk of staying in this situation. Well, it's not sustainable, the situation we're in. it's not sustainable financially. And so, I mean, not trying to buy the water system actually is extreme. And she's right. It's very risky. It's not a good scenario for the public to stay to not try to take public control of the water system. And is it daunting? Yes. Is it risky? Yes. There's many obstacles that we'll have to overcome. There's things we'll have to litigate. There's risk, to be sure, but this is the way I think about it. There's a quote I keep on my desk from Justice Brandeis. He said, "Most of the things worth doing in the world were declared impossible before they were done." And I just keep that on my desk because sometimes it looks things that look, he's right. He's right. It may at times look daunting or difficult or even impossible, but it's not impossible. And I believe with the public support, I think we have what we need. We have a very decent chance of succeeding. We have a well-managed water management district. We have public support. We have an excellent general manager, general counsel, and board, and staff, and a situation that people really want to get to a better place with the management of our water, and it would benefit the entire community so much, and the majority of the public realizes that. So I think all the essential component, the things that we absolutely must have to have a good chance of success, are in place. They exist. And I think we should go for it. I think the public deserves to have the district try and do what they voted for. Director Anderson.
Monterey is a small community, and this whole nation has just watched the horror brought on by the people of this nation, by people who wanted to ignore the voters and what they wanted. The unbelievable damage that was done by that. And I've just been horrified at that. So yeah, people voted here. It was a legal vote. Nobody challenged it. There was nothing found that was wrong with it. And that is our job. So that's what we're doing. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Other discussion? Well, if not, then we can proceed to vote.
I'll make a motion to approve, to proceed.
And Chair Paul, there's already a motion and it was seconded. The motion was made by Director Riley and seconded by Edwards. So
I remember this time.
Okay.
So let's vote.
Okay. Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Aye.
Director Malik,
Yes.
Director Edwards,
Yes.
Director Roberson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Adams, absent, Chair Paul.
Yes.
The motion is adopted.
I want to thank the public for speaking up and for supporting this and supporting our efforts. All right. See what more we have on our agenda.
Yeah, the last item is, I don't know, it should be considered a happy item, I think. You adopted a board policy in October of 2020 that if we have surplus user fee revenues, that we would make an attempt to prepay the Mechanics Bank loan, previously the Rabobank loan. And we find ourselves in that situation. which we did expect, and we had budgeted $500,000 for prepayment. This is exactly what Suresh did last year in September. And we're coming to you again for your authorization to make a prepayment, which would drop the loan balance to just under 2.2 million. We are beginning discussions with Mechanics Bank about refinancing that loan as it does come due next June with a balloon payment. We will also present to you the option of how you could make that prepayment from reserves. But as of right now, we can utilize some of our anticipated revenues as planned to make a $500,000 prepayment. And that is the recommended request under this action.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay, shall we take this out to the public now?
Yes, so if you would like to make public comment on item number 9, please raise your hand. And if you're calling in, push *9. And at this time, I would like to invite Susan Schiavone. Susan, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Hi, of course, I support this as a member of the Ordinance 152 Oversight Panel. It's something that the panel has been wanting for quite a while, and I'm happy to see it coming together. And yes, please do pay down some of that loan and pay back some of the reserves. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
At this time, I would like to invite John Tilley. John, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you, board members. Likewise, as a member of the 152 committee, I would suggest that the district plan for a $2.8 million pay down of that debt, because it's a prudent thing to do, and budget that. Thank you very much.
And Madam Chair, if I could add a couple of things, as there appears to be no additional speakers.
Please.
This demonstrates a little bit of what you were alluding to earlier, that it's not just one thing that we do. We try to balance. And so here we've heard from the public saying, you know, pay down your debts, try to eliminate the water supply charge. And that's what we're doing. We hear the public say, invest in water supply. And we just did a $3.8 million well number 4, deep well number 4. We've got a federal grant for $4+ million for deep well number 6. And we ourselves budgeted $1.6 million for pre-construction costs of the Pure Water Monterey expansion. So we're working on water supply. And then there are folks who'd like us to hoard all our money to pay legal expenses for Measure J. And we can't simply do that as well. But we do have reserves, and we do have concerns about where Measure J may lead us. We've got to do all these things at the same time, and we do. And you know, it just reflects a little bit here and a little bit there, or maybe a lot of it here and a lot of it there. But we are balanced in our approach, and we're trying to do everything we've been asked to do. We do hear our public, but you know, we're not just going to pick a single course of action. We've got a lot of things we have to do.
Okay. So do we have a motion to authorize this expenditure to pay down a portion of the Mechanics Bank loan? Director Anderson?
Yes, I move that we do spend that $500,000 to pay down the loan.
And I believe we have a second.
I'll second.
Director,
I'm sorry, Clyde, was it you?
No, I think Director Malik.
Oh, sorry.
I heard Director Malik, yeah. Seconded first. Okay, now let's have roll call vote, please. And unless there are any comments on any Any comments or discussion? Then let's vote, please.
Director Riley,
Aye.
Director Mallett,
Yes.
Director Edwards,
Yes,
Director Roberson,
Aye.
Director Anderson,
Yes,
Vice Chair Adams absent, Chair Paul.
Yes.
The motion is adopted.
Are there any questions or comments on the informational items remaining? Director Riley?
I just wanted, besides all the other things that we do, Dave somehow found the time to write to AAA on their guidance to tourists who come to our area about some water issues. I just appreciate. I read that. I had to laugh to myself, but I just wanted to stick out my chest. I'm so pleased to be associated with a group and some professionals who think that far ahead and will take the time to do that. So Dave, I just want to compliment you, and I didn't want to just go by without making a specific notice of it. So thank you.
Well said. Any other comments? If not, we can adjourn.
thank you. Good meeting.
thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Recording stopped.
Good night.
Good night.